Glory to Jesus Christ. My name is Bishop Nectarios, and today we're taking a step through our ancient faith. So, good evening, everybody. I'm dressed down in my civilian clothes today. I wanted to have a kind of an informal talk with you. Now, I've been getting questions a lot about marriage, and is marriage the right thing in today's society? Is marriage something that's still viable? Has the public opinion of what marriage is changed too much? And as a result, marriage is no longer this or that. So I wanted to stop and take a minute to take a look at what that is. Some of you who know me know that I was married for 15 years and that my marriage ended in divorce. And that caused a lot of pain, a lot of sadness, a lot of suffering, I think, for everybody really involved. And that caused me to really take a step back because for a while I was angry and I was upset. Most men, when we get married, we believe we're married. That's for the rest of our life. This is the person we want to be with. And guys have that inbuilt expectation. And oftentimes when marriages end, it can become kind of, a problem. It shatters our understanding, our expectation of reality. So, the biggest problem that I'm seeing first is a poor understanding of what marriage is. Because a lot of people seem to think that they can get married, quit, divorce, get married again and again and again and again and again and again without any respect for the fact that marriage is a sacrament and it's a covenant made with God. The fact that marriages now, I think we're up to 50% of marriages are ending in divorce. And consider this perspective from the male perspective. When you get to divorce court, they're going to skin you alive. It's almost a guarantee. There are a couple of situations where it didn't work that way. I happen to be one of them. But by and large, it's almost a guarantee you're going to get skinned alive. It's almost a guarantee you're going to lose custody of your children. Because the courts have this kind of prejudiced opinion against men. That's still the case. You'll lose everything. And men have been losing everything. And it's caused a kind of reactionary movement, this whole men going their own way, red pill. Some people have stronger opinions than they do. And I understand, because when I say that men have these understandings that, this is it, I'm married, this is for life thing, that's what we're taught from the time we're young men. We're taught this: you get married, you start a family, you go to college, you get a nice career, and then let's roll with it. And then you find out that you go to college and end up smashed with student loan debt. You start a family and eventually you end up divorced and you lose your wife and probably your home and everything you've worked for and custody of your kids. And if it's a nasty divorce, there's a good chance that your children are now going to be weaponized against you as well. And which is ironic because just about everybody says what a horrible, slimy thing it is to do, and then it happens an awful lot, probably from the same people that say that. So you have to first be conscious of that right now, marriage as it's practiced in the United States, as a legal contract engaged between two willing parties, is a terrible idea. Because it places you in an unenviable position, and at any time your woman can flip the script, severely screw you over, take everything and leave you with nothing. Now, the flip side of this, obviously, from those of you who can see who I am, I'm not a woman. But I've heard a lot of women talk about what their expectations for marriage are. And from what I've heard, women spend their whole life dreaming about getting married. Women, um, they fantasize what it's going to look like, what she's going to wear, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The proposal, all the details. I mean, this is classically considered one of the most important moments of a woman's life. She gets married, starts a family with her loved one, and just as often we hear examples of men who go out for a pack of cigarettes and don't ever come back, or we hear guys that feel free to, impregnate 5, 6, 7 girls. I heard one guy, he impregnated something like 12 girls, 16 girls, something ridiculous like that. And then he just skips on all of them, doesn't pay his child support, doesn't really take care of anything. And I'm thinking, you engaged in the activity, you knew the risks. And the fact that there's that many people in a row kind of makes me think that you're smarter than you let on. You know kind of what's happening. It's a scummy thing to do. Men and women both are responsible for different inappropriate behaviors. While we're at it, domestic violence is a 50-50 thing because a lot of domestic violence happens from women on men, just as much, if not more, than men committing domestic abuse on women. However, men are not allowed to really talk about it because, that's just your woman slapping you around. We come up with all kinds of little phrases, grow some balls, get over it, what are you, weak? Those are the ones that are probably a little bit more PG anyway. We all know a few examples. Rub some dirt on it, quit crying. And this idea that as men, there's no one there for us, there's no one there to support us, there's no one there to speak for our needs and our privileges and our rights, and as far as families are concerned, lead me to an uncomfortable place that if you're going to engage in marriage as Christians, then there needs to be a classical understanding of marriage. There needs to be a degree of education and preparation for marriage. And I'll tell you this, one thing I've noticed is that people will date for a year or 2 years. One time they dated for, I think, 6 months before they got married. And what ended up happening is a couple of years down the road, they started to grow into different people, as naturally occurs. But these different people were too different to gel well anymore. And so they go in front of the judge and they cite irreconcilable differences. But all the while, really the question should be asked, why did you get married so young? You did it really because of lust. You think it's about love, but love is what kicks in after the period of lust is gone. Love is what exists when the romance has died off. And that's a problem. We don't take very long to get to know this person that we want to spend the rest of our life with because we're afraid we'll fall out of love with that person, which is a real consideration. If you spend too long playing and not enough time getting on the serious side of things, yeah, eventually you're going to have that cooling off period and you're not married. So marriage is still a viable path, but there are dangers to it that you need to take into consideration. There are responsibilities and challenges that you really need to be educated about. And you need to also understand the dangers and temptations that come from other people. Because there's almost a cynicism regarding things that are of a Christian nature, particularly anything of a sacramental character. And what I mean by that is You decide that you're going to get married. You've engaged in a sacred, sacramental, unbreakable covenant. Surprise when you go to the judge and the judge says, "You're divorced." God may not agree. That's why the church has an annulment process, which itself is terribly misunderstood. It doesn't mean that your children become bastards. It just basically means that you go in front of the church and say, "Hey, we thought this was the one. This was a mistake." And the church takes a look at it and sees the reasons why the marriage ended, and usually will grant, for sufficiently good reasons, an annulment of the marriage. However, the reason why most people get in trouble is because they get divorced and they automatically assume the church is against them. And some bad pastors reinforce this stereotype when really they should be reading theology better. They don't attempt to get an annulment. They go through civil divorce, and then they remarry civilly. And that's where the problem kicks in. Because now you're engaging in what is supposed to be a sacramental service outside of the church, a sacred rite of the church. You're engaging in a manner outside of the church completely, which is where people run into trouble. Marriage it's solemn, it's beautiful, it is sacred, and that sense of sacredness has been lost in large part in Western society. It's now in vogue to be cynical about religion, to be critical about people of faith, and to just assume automatically that they're hypocrites and, snake oil salesmen, and they're hateful and judgmental people, etc., etc., ignoring the real truths of what it means to be Christian, and in our case, what it means to be an Orthodox Christian. And that's a shame. It really is, because people are following this in vogue tradition, unaware of the fact that sooner or later it's going to flip the other way, and it's going to become fashionable to become a Christian again. And all of a sudden it's going to be in vogue, and everyone's going to be chasing that. And the very same people that rebelled and created all kinds of mischief are then going to be singing praises to God, not because they love God, but because it's now the in vogue thing to do, which is a separate conversation for another time. Now, if you don't feel called to marriage, we have a consideration that has to be taken into place, because classically speaking, having sex outside of marriage is a sin. So if you choose to take the single path, that's a celibate path. And that's something that most people simply aren't prepared for. They want to live a carnal lifestyle. They want to chase women in the streets. They want to get laid over and over and over and over and over and over again. They want to have that kind of wild lifestyle and then go to church on Sunday mornings and act like, it's all okay. But that flies in the face of what it means to follow Christ, isn't it? Because the church is the collection of baptized souls everywhere, and what we follow is we follow the way that is Christ, his way, his path, his teachings. We follow the Son of God, and we love and worship God in all ways. How can you stand in front of God and claim that you love him when you willfully disobey him, knowing better but not caring? It's because society has taught you this false version of Christianity that makes no demands on you, asks no sacrifices of you, expects nothing of you. Just show up to church on Sunday, sit down, and all is good. God loves you and forgives everything without asking that you repent. And we wonder why people flee Christianity for religions that are still sticking to their guns, like Buddhism. Because there's actually a challenge to that. There's a path to that you have to complete. And, that appeals to the people who want a genuine religious and spiritual experience. So, we have a path for people who feel called to be married. We have the responsibility to be educated properly on what it means to be married. We have a celibate path. There's also a path, which is a very rare path, for those who feel called to the life of a monk or a nun. And that often gets confused with the secular idea of these people being a bunch of lazy butts, which is hysterical. I mean, just hysterical that they think that monks are lazy. Most people could not keep up with the lifestyle that a monk lives. As a matter of fact, just a little bit of a segue, there was a monastery in Italy which was participating in a program where prison convicts coming off of long hauls could spend the remaining time of their sentence at the monastery. But then they figured out that monks often wake up at 4, 5, and 6 o'clock in the morning, go clear to midnight, day in and day out, and their days are filled with prayer, worship, hard work, and contemplation. Often they are in isolation of each other. It is a sacrifice of your whole self in the total and unrelenting pursuit of God. And it is that understanding. It's not a desire to hide from the world or run away from the world, or it's not a place for those who are world weary. It is quite literally a battlefield where a person consecrates themselves and is consecrated by their abbot into the full time pursuit of God with no hesitations, with no reservations, with no excuses. They often sacrifice just about everything to follow God. They give up obvious avenues for advancement in society. They give up the idea of being fantastic businessmen and wealthy people, and they give up the idea of being famous, and they give up the idea of being married, and for those who were married, being married again. You know, they give up the idea of quite a bit in the total and unrelenting pursuit of God. And that is solemn, it is sacred, and it's one of the rarest paths of the church. And it is a path that is almost out of lockstep completely with what today puts forward. And that's because our society today attempts to sell you on this idea of quick and easy gratification, instant gratification. Get what you want right now with no sacrifices. That's one reason why we're drowning in debt as a people, because we're told that we can get whatever we want and just charge it to debt that will take months and months and months to pay off, with all this extra interest that's attached to it. And as a result, we often do not understand that we are really just screwing ourselves. We are betraying ourselves financially. And if that's bad, just imagine how much more it is to do so spiritually. It's often been said that, we are a soul with a body. We are not a body that has a soul in it. And I want to paint for you the picture of what this means. Throughout your life and throughout your time interacting with other people, you are, to a large degree, in control of how you react to things, of what you decide to do in reaction to things. You're going to sin, no matter what. That's just a foregone conclusion. Itchy nose. You're going to make mistakes. And I'm not going to tell you it's okay, because it's not. Sin is sin, and it will lead you to hell, which is another thing that has been discredited lately, but that, again, is a conversation for another time. You need to know the options that are available to you, that you can live a life of marriage within the sacrament of marriage in complete unity with the church and have a beautiful and loving relationship between a man and a woman united in life together in all challenges. You can also have a wonderful and beautiful life as a single person, but from a church perspective, that involves the idea of celibacy, because if you engage in sex out of wedlock, that is adultery. It's not popular to say these things anymore because instant gratification. But look what's happened. Look what has happened to the idea of how easy it is to have romantic interactions now. You don't have to invest in that person at all. There's websites and apps out there that allow you to simply hook up and go for a swing with people whenever you want, however many times you want, and many partners as will click on you or swipe on you. And that's a problem because sex is a sacred act in and of itself. It is the ministry of co-creation with God. It is the ministry of co-creation with God. And I want you to really think about what that means when you engage in the act of intercourse. Aside from the pleasure and the intimacy that comes from the action of sex, there is also the sense that you are creating a new life by this interaction. And when you cheapen it by turning it into a source of carnal pleasure, I think you start to dilute your understanding of what is sacred. And we're all guilty of this to some degree because it's encouraged to all of us to play the field, to, date around and don't settle down right away, But that sense of sacredness, again, continues to be diluted because now you're taught that a act of reproduction, created solely for reproduction, but also has the added benefit of producing intimacy, is something less than sacred now. It's a means of pleasure. And then what happens when an unwanted pregnancy comes about? You have been given a gift of life. And whether you have just conceived that life or whether that life is fully formed and about to be born, it is a human being. It has a soul. It has the ability to feel pain fairly quickly in its development. If we found a speck of bacteria on another planet, we would say that we had found life. But when we have a developing human in the womb, we call it a clump of cells. And that's because the act of procreation has been diluted from a sacred act undertaken by a loving married couple to a source of carnal pleasure and a way to blow off steam. And that's just an example on how the sacred can be diluted through something like sex. How about the idea of work being sacred in its own way? By the sweat of your brow will you earn your daily bread and all that. Do we consider the daily things that we do as sacred as well? Because you have the attention of God. No other creature in the universe can make that claim. You can. Not only do you have the attention of God, you also have the attention of his mother, the Theotokos, the God-bearer. You also have the attention of a guardian angel. All of this is backed up by scripture or tradition. All of this is both true and important for you to understand because your soul can become very diluted through the actions that you take. And if you want to know an example of what I mean, I want you to do this. I want you to take a cup and I want you to fill it halfway with water and then buy a soda. And I want you to start pouring the soda into the cup of water. In the beginning, the water is pure, and you can see through it, and it is clear, clean drinking water. But as you start to pour water into that cup, what happens? Now the water starts to get cloudy. Now the water starts to not look so clean and so pure anymore. And eventually, when there is as much, if not more, soda than water, the water is dark and you can't see through it, and it is no longer pure water anymore. And there is a very difficult path to separate the water from the soda again, when it might be better altogether to empty out the cup, rinse it out, and fill it with clean water again. But I feel like I'm getting off topic. So, quick recap of what we've been discussing today. I wanted to first touch on the fact that we are sacred beings, that we have a united relationship with God, and that the sacrament of marriage is exactly that, a sacrament. And that the current viewpoint that is in fashion today has taught us to be cynical of our beliefs, our sacred beliefs. And as a result, we have diluted sacredness. And because of that, we've treated sacraments cheaply. And our behavior really starts to devolve when we do this. So, if you're going to engage in the sacrament of marriage, I want you to get educated on what it means to be married, not just the good stuff, but the stuff that's going to suck. I want you to get educated on how to resolve conflicts. I want you to get educated on how to manage your money. I want you to get educated in, well, really, there's a lot of things, how to deal with your partner, what to expect with children. And then some of us need basic remedial life skills, not just how to manage your money, but we need to be reminded of how to balance a checkbook and how to invest our money. And that's important because one of the biggest issues that marriages suffer from is financial issues. And the other one tends to be bedroom issues. But that's a whole different discussion. And there are also resources on that too, but that's beyond the scale of this video. Once you get educated on the kinds of challenges and skills that you need to really have a successful, loving, and kind marriage, the next step is start going to church. Start basing your marriage off of God. Because, and I've noticed this, there needs to be a standard. And I'll tell you about it. Before I was Orthodox, I was part of the Old Catholics. And among the Old Catholics, there is no Pope. All the different Old Catholic churches have the authority to decide their own beliefs and doctrines. And many of them have diverged so far from what it means to be Catholic that they are Catholic in name only. And I found that issue to be not very present among the Orthodox. But without a cornerstone to hold firm your marriage, the same principle will happen with your marriage. And all of a sudden, when the lust period dies down and you're left with what should be love, you might just be left with condescension or anger or resentment or feeling trapped. God, that's a terrible one. When your partner feels trapped and unable to escape from a loveless marriage. That is torture, literal torture for some people, and I can't blame them. Once you have your relationship with the church in the best possible way it can be, now it's time to discuss getting married and going through whatever process your church might require for you to tie the knot. And when you get married, keep going to church afterwards. And the reason you want to keep going to church afterwards is because your soul needs to be fed properly. And you can either fill your soul, feed your soul with good things, or you can feed your soul with worldly and carnal things. And I'll leave it up to you to put two and two together on what happens when you feed your soul with worldly things and then you try to live a sacred life. On the other hand, you also have the single and celibate route, and you have the idea of living life as a monastic. And now I'm careful about monasticism because that is a path I do feel called to, and I will probably be engaging in soon, very soon. However, it's a path that very few are called to legitimately. And once you're in it, it's a sacred covenant. The church holds you to that covenant. And once you're in the care of an abbot, you live at the monastery, you live in cloister, or you live at the skeet, or you live wherever they have you assigned. Those are your monastic quarters. For the rest of your life, you're going to be a monk. You need to carefully consider your choice, because once you're in it, you're in it. That's it. Case closed. And part of your challenges are going to be staying with it. It's not a decision that you can, like join the military, enlist for 4 years, and then you're out. Although it is very much like joining a military in some aspects. It is a lifetime commitment with no end of service date. And it is nothing less than the unrelenting spiritual warfare in the purity of the pursuit of God. And because it is such a serious and solemn practice and approach to life, it has to be undertaken with nothing but the highest degree of respect and sacredness. And if you can do that, and if you genuinely feel called to that, then it is time for you to look at that. At least in part. Because if you're married, that path is closed to you. So, I hope this video has been helpful to you. This is a hard topic to talk about because, of course, the points that I'm going to discuss are going to be traditional, they're going to be Christian, and they are going to essentially fly in the face of all of the opinions and help that is being waved around today. What it means to be sacred in our world today means you're going to offend an awful lot of people because of the certainty of your faith. A group of people who would be far happier if you were simply this person who doubted and were a secular, worldly person. It's going to be a challenge for you. So take it a step at a time. Don't hurt yourself in the attempt to live up to it, build up to it, face it every single day until you make it. Don't fake it until you make it. Face it every single day until you make it. And you will have a life built on sacredness, in unity with God, in a loving marriage based on the love of God, who will be the rock that supports and sustains you. It is still possible to have the marriages that our parents and our grandparents had, but we have to reestablish that understanding of sacredness in our life, in our world today, and how we treat others and how we react to how we are treated. So, I'm going to let y'all go for now. God loves you, and I love you. Take care. God bless.